this double stack half dart project for a while, and after having used it in an HVZ, shooting around 200 darts through it, I'm going to call this the 1.0 stable build, though there's definitely stuff that's still going to be changed. So the big interesting thing here is, yeah, it takes half darts. This is a Dominator shell, and everything other than the shell, and I guess the electronics are standard, was made with functional half dart double stacks in mind. So this is a 23 round mag. I can print slightly longer ones. They're about 27. All I have is an A1 mini. But from here, yeah, I want to either get a new printer that's larger or have someone else print some larger ones. I believe on a 256 squared, or cubed rather, printer, that this should be able to go up to about 30, 33, depending on how you do your floor plate situation. This is just a cap that goes over. But yeah, I'm just going to show off some of the stuff and how this works. This Magwell has a new addition, which is kind of like a bad lever, essentially, like a remote mag release. It still allows access like a paddle over here. This version was just a paddle, and this worked fine. This is what I used in the HVZ, but the way these line up, it was a little bit cumbersome to do reloads with retention. So yeah, that's the, I guess, the newest feature right now. And yeah, so this is just a Magwell insert. There's a peg within the Dominator shell that will go through both sides of this, and it's also retained by the native mag release. So once this is in it, it can't be removed accidentally. You have to open up the blaster to do it because of this retention up here. So this, when you're using this in this configuration, this is completely vestigial, which probably means I should design a delete for this, especially because I want to make this lever bigger. But regardless, so this is how that Magwell looks. There's vestigial parts here that are going to get removed as well. Like there's two different actual release spacings in here from when I was testing out spacings. So the bottom one is what it ended up being. It had to be basically as high as possible within the shell, because the topmost dart feed on here, or rather the lower one, needed to be as high as possible, if that makes sense. The top one never had an issue, but the lower one, in order to feed into, this is a pretty standard cage. I don't remember which file I used, but I did use one that has a feed ramp, but I had to shorten the feed ramp because, I'll try to get this as visible as possible, but it really needs pretty exact spacing on this in order for darts to actually feed. And it also needs these are feed ramps here. I'll see if I can make that more visible. And that's because it turns out when it's double stack mag feeding into a single inline standard cage, it needs a little assistance in order to not just launch like crazy. My original design like this didn't have a left side feed ramp, and it technically functioned, but everything that fed from the left side just went absolutely nuts and went crazy. These use drum springs, and this space around the back is both to prevent darts from getting dragged back by the pusher, which is an issue that's kind of inherent to double stacks. I say issue, but when I used it for about 200 darts worth in the HVC that I did, I had exactly one double feed, and that didn't cause a jam, it just fired 2 darts at once. So I'm pretty happy with the reliability, at least as a first cursory test. These are single piece mag bodies, has a follower with the drum spring attached, and then this definitely needs some deburring, but yeah, this is basically just a cap on the end. It does have holes to add screws, but it's also good enough with the friction fit that I didn't bother with it. The way this is set up, it will only take 36 millimeter darts, and they have to be stiff. So I am using, not from the store who shall not be named, but I have another source for these golf starts. I'm a huge shill for these, especially now that I can get them without going to that other source. And I would recommend, if I ever release these files into the public, I would definitely recommend that this is all you use in this. It will take box fresh workers, but even if they're slightly less dense than that, it will have issues. And that's just part of the deal, because when they're sitting staggered in a magazine, if they squish, there's more friction inherent to a double stack design when they're sitting in here. I'll show you how this looks. But just if you have squishy darts, and when I say squishy, I don't mean like just old tired darts. Even the slightest squish beyond these, there inherently are going to be issues. You also have to be mindful when you're loading this. I did notice that when I was topping off mags while playing, that if I was going too quickly and you kind of get them, if you force them together, you can cause an issue. So you just have to essentially load it like a real steel pistol mag, but you really have to put it in line. Once they're in line, like once you have a loaded mag, you can do a little press check, and as long as they're bouncing back, you're not going to have an issue, is what I've found so far. Yeah, I guess another thing to talk about is the pusher. This is a super ugly one from when I was prototyping. You can see the infill there. But yeah, this is essentially what the pusher looks like at the front. This one is chamfered, which ended up not being necessary and actually caused more issues than it solved. But yeah, so in order to get up, you can kind of see the silhouette of the one that's in here right now. But in order to get up to the correct position, it had to be this dogleg shape. And yeah, each where you see the nubs on the end, that's more or less the center line of the left and right feed dart columns. So that's how the pusher works. I would love to be able to make something like this using a solenoid, but I do not know enough about that in order to make it happen easily. With a conventional pusher mech, I am planning on making a full auto one. This is semi-auto only right now. But yeah, other than that, there was a local that gave me, I just printed this today, it's probably going to end up getting further remixed because I've got some uglies on there that are my fault, but a Dominator extended battery tray, and this ugly front end. This is also going to be getting remixed further at some point, so that's less of a eat your fingers situation. That's just all the orange filament I had to get it legal for HVZ. But all that is to say, this took me, as someone who has no CAD knowledge prior to this, more or less, about 3 months to produce. I'm kind of shocked that nobody else made one before me. While it was difficult, I imagine if you knew what you were doing more from a CAD perspective, it would have been easier to do. It also could just be that the lack of availability of those Gauss darts created a perception that it was impossible to do this reliably with existing darts. Because I mean, even like, if you have a worker that's been run through a flywheeler once, it's kind of a toss-up if it's going to cause a binding issue in these mags or not. It uses the same spacing as a Talon in terms of like vertically, so this is at the same location where it would be relative to the feed lips. It was pretty easy to start with. Literally all I did to start was just take like a unibody Talon STL, resize it. It ended up getting a whole bunch of other changes, but in terms of just whether or not this can exist, I'm very surprised that nobody else has done this yet. But all that is to say, yeah, I'm calling this the Mick stick, and I'm very happy that I didn't have any catastrophic malfunctions. I'm looking forward to making a full auto version, and while it's sort of a drop-in situation, I mean, on mine I snub-nosed the front end of this Dominator because this is an HVZ build. There would definitely be room to do something brushless or just crazy with, you know, 3-stage or whatever. I think that the main selling points of something like this is probably going to be for invitationals for HVZ. This is what I'm planning on bringing to Maryland Mayhem. Beyond that, I don't know, other stuff I want to do with it. I definitely want to make larger mags. I'm probably going to change this so that there's a paddle that comes up further, because right now it's more of a pinky situation. But yeah, I hope to have a full auto one before Maryland Mayhem. I don't know if that's going to be realistic or not. Yeah, that's what I got.